We have given you our AFC offensive defensive scheme or setups. We've given you our NFC offensive and defensive setups. We have players all time on both sides, and you all knew the caveats. They had to play the majority of their career in the conference we elected them to. But now the question comes up, who has the all-time greatest team if a head-to-head matchup was ever to happen? And we're going to debate that right now. Now, you have probably seen the rosters. We're going to go ahead and break them down for you right now, and we're going to start with the NFC on offense. The quarterback position, we got a starter and a backup. The starter, after much debate on this segment, apparently is going to be Michael Vick, and this is primetime Michael Vick, Atlanta Falcons Michael Vick. On the bench is Drew Brees, one of the all-time great quarterbacks when it comes to a passing yards, one of the most he's thrown for the most 5,000-yard seasons.
This is already
I didn't want him on the bench, people. I didn't want him on the bench.
This is already off the rails as soon as we start this, man.
But that's how it's going to be. At the running back position, we have two running backs. That is Barry Sanders and Marshall Faulk. Wide receivers in the NFC are Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, and Megatron. Our tight ends, which is the weakest part of this offensive scheme setup right now, is going to be Kittle and Jason Witten. And our offensive lines is going to be at center, Jason Kelsey, guard, Randall McDaniel, guard, Larry Allen, tackle, Tyron Smith, and tackle, Lane Johnson. Now, we are going to go look at the defensive side of the NFC. And trust me, this one is also just as loaded. The defensive line for the NFC is John Randall, Reggie White, Michael Strahan, and Aaron Donald. We go to the linebacker core, where our outside linebackers are Derek Brooks and Lawrence Taylor, and our middle linebacker is Luke Kuechly. And then we go to the defensive backs, where it is Deion Sanders, Rondé Barber, Anais Williams, Ronnie Lott, and Brian Dawkins. Now, just that alone is absolutely terrifying and would decimate all. And I really, really don't know if that was all I had to say. If we can really make a decision that anyone on this panel is going to pick the AFC. But we're going to talk about the AFC real quick anyway. Where we start with the offense, where our quarterback is the greatest quarterback of all time, the guy who elevated talent to the highest level from the depths. And for now, it doesn't matter. It's what you've done, not what you're going to do. Peyton Manning, another all-time great quarterback, is on the bench, which is a travesty in itself that Peyton Manning's riding the bench. Our running backs are two also all-time. One's currently playing, and everyone knows who he is. That is Derrick Henry. And our other back is LaDainian Tomlinson, one of the most prolific backs of the 2000s. Our wide receiver core, not as strong as the NFC, but some bona fide studs nonetheless. Marvin Harrison, Antonio Brown, and Andre Johnson. Our tight ends is probably the strongest part of this offense outside of the running backs and the quarterback position, with Rob Gronkowski and Travis Kelce. Offensive line, not quite as tough, but still some all-time greats there. Jeff Saturday at center, John Hanna, one of the best guards to ever play the game, Bruce Matthews, Joe Thomas, and Ogden as our tackles. Now we're going to move to the defensive side. Defensive line picks, tons of controversy on the defensive line. Bruce Smith not making this list. We've talked about it enough. We're not bringing it up. But Richard Seymour, J.J. Watt, Mean Joe Green, and Myles Garrett round out the defensive line. Linebackers are Derek Thomas and Junior Seau on the outside linebacker positions, with Ray Lewis, the greatest middle linebacker of all time, holding down the fort. And then we get to our defensive backs, where it's Rod Woodson, Ed Reed, Charles Woodson, Darrelle Revis, and Troy Polamalu. So, that all being said, long-winded intro, took me about 4 minutes to get through them all. And I know what you're saying, Joe, that's not 11 players. It's not 11 players on either side. We have backups. You have to have scheme versatility here, people. You have to be able to match up. You can't just roll linebackers out there to guard some of these slot wide receivers. It's not going to work that way, okay? You got slot corners and everything like that. You got to be able to be versatile. That being said, I'm going to go to the guy who didn't have a chance to be in those roster decisions. The guy who wasn't there to make the picks. The guy who's already has a problem with half the people on this list because he thinks other decisions should have been made and believes it's a travesty people were left off. Sammy, based on these rosters and matching up, how do you think this game would go if they were able to play?
All right, well, before I get started, I do want to say, excuse the lawn mowing that's going on outside right now. He came in short notice, didn't call anybody, and now he's mowing my lawn in the middle of me recording. Unfortunately, I'm a nice guy, so I let him do it. But with that being said, I just want to, before I critique everything about what you guys picked, first of all, look, Patrick Mahomes just not being in the AFC is a complete travesty. I understand. Now, I understand. It's Peyton Manning. Oh, it's Tom Brady. Cool. I get it. At this point, I am content knowing that we have all-time great QBs in the AFC, and I can let that slide. However, in the NFC, there is a severe problem that I cannot let slide. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Montana, for almost all of the NFL's history, was considered the greatest QB of all time. And somehow, some way, instead of including him in this NFC roster, we have Michael freaking Vick. I understand it's prime right. Michael Vick. It's prime Michael Vick. I am not basing this on vibes. I want to win the game, okay? And there's no way Michael Vick... First of all, look, you're lucky that this weapons group in the NFC is literally God sent, okay? Respectfully, nobody is guarding any of these guys between Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson, and Jerry Rice. Nobody on the AFC. Look, let me not get disrespectful.
Yeah, you better watch your mouth.
I love Revis Island. I love Revis Island. And I like Charles Woodson, and I like Rod Woodson. I like all three of them. They're great. They're great. They're absolutely great. This is the greatest wide receiver ever that we're talking about. The greatest wide receiver talent we've ever seen. Two of the greatest wide receiver talents we've ever seen, okay? I don't give a damn about Revis Island. He cannot cover Jerry Rice, okay? He can't. He just can't. He can't cover Jerry Rice, and I don't think he could have definitely covered Moss. His literal name was Moss. We literally saw an old, washed Randy Moss literally moss him with one hand seamlessly without even trying. That was Patriots washed Randy Moss. Imagine what a Vikings peak Randy Moss would have done to Revis Island. I don't know. Would have not have been. Look, as far as peaks go, Revis, I respect. But respectfully, for going peaks, sorry, Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, and Megatron, I don't care about your peaks. Those guys clear. Now, that's already an advantage. Then we have the running backs. And it's very freaking Sanders. It's very Sanders. We're talking about one of the greatest, you could argue the greatest running back talent ever in the NFC side. Okay? And on top of that, since we have Michael Vick throwing the ball, it doesn't even matter if the ball is off target or if he runs into a sack. He can just flip it backwards. Megatron will find a way to get it over somebody. Okay? It doesn't matter. Now, I will say this about the offensive line of the NFC. If we're throwing J.J. Watt and Myles Garrett against, what was it, Lane Johnson and Larry Allen?
Tyron Smith.
And Tyron Smith, rather?
Prime Tyron Smith.
It's going to be very feisty. It's going to be very feisty. And I would have picked the NFC, and I would have picked the AFC. But then, and then you have me, Joe Green, and respect to me and Joe Green. But here's the other problem I have. Ladies and gentlemen, set up. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Seymour is on this team. And I'm not mad at Richard Seymour being on this team. I respect Richard Seymour, but this is clearly Patriots bias. All three of my companions here.
I didn't want it.
We were Patriots fans. They enabled this while I was gone. I would have brought law and order to this. Kris, I know it was you, okay? I know it was you.
Yes,
I want you, before I move on, look, it's pretty obvious. I'm picking the NFC to win this. I think they completely won. I don't care that Tom Brady's the GOAT. I don't care about, I understand the weapons that Tom Brady has to throw out. I mean, Antonio Brown, Andre Johnson, those guys are just ridiculous. And then you got Rob Gronkowski and Travis Kelce. And the offensive line is actually godlike, like in the AFC for sure. But I'm sorry, it literally does not matter because the secondary, it's saying something. The secondary just is not good enough, and the pass rush, unfortunately, is not good enough to get to the NFC, to get to Michael Vick or to get to Drew Brees. Bruce Smith isn't on this team, bro. Bruce Smith is not on this. I don't understand how Bruce Smith is not in the AFC, man. This is the most disrespectful. Kris, explain yourself, Kris.
Okay.
Explain yourself right now. Explain yourself. Go.
Myself to anybody. See, here's the thing. So we were off script, okay, and we were talking, and I allowed them. Not allowed. I told them what I was feeling at the time, and me and Joe talked about it, and he sent me some thoughts. I'm like, okay, that's a thought, but I'm sorry. I still like Seymour. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with him, okay? But it's a preference. I think everybody has a preference. In every aspect of your life, there is a preference. There is somebody like, you know what? In one game, you got to make a decision, okay? Sometimes you just got to make hard decisions. So that I'm not trying to put him to the side or say he can be an honorary, like, hey, if he could be on the team. That was just my pick. It is what it is, okay?
Honorary. The greatest sack artist on the
Preference
of all time.
Preference. We're talking about preference.
Also,
Preference.
Absolutely.
We had to talk her into putting John Randall on this team because she was going to leave off a Vikings player who 100% deserved it and was about to cause another uproar in the Vikings community.
I don't hate the Vikings. I don't hate the Vikings.
That was personal. No, that's definitely personal.
That's definitely
whatsoever. I do not hate the Vikings. Okay,
the Vikings might hate you at this point,
right?
though. The
I
Vikings.
see that.
This is Chris's Bill Clinton interview. I did not.
Oh God.
I do not hate the Minnesota Vikings.
Listen, I'm going to jump in here and take some heat off of Kris because we decided to just shit on Kris there for about a couple minutes. That was kind of wild.
Rightfully so, Matt.
But listen, okay,
You tell me you've never made a bad pick in your life. Come on.
I'm gonna.
He's a Dolphins fan. Of course he has.
You want to know?
You want to know?
First off, that's low, Joe. But no, Matt. No, you know what, Kris? Kris? You're right. I shouldn't take all your heat. Is fine. You, Matt. You. I'm looking at you to explain to me. Explain to me, please, why Michael Vick is on this NFC team. And are you trying to sabotage the NFC right now?
Sammy, if you do me a favor and just shut up, I'll explain it to you right now, all right?
Absolutely not. This is unbelievable.
Sit over there and shut up while I explain to you why Michael Vick is on this team, okay? First of all, this is not the NBA. This is not the MLB. This is not the NHL. Are we playing 7-game series here? Are we playing – is there a 7-game series from the AFC and NFC? No. This is a freaking Super Bowl. This is one game, and I want the guy who I saw with my own eyes have the single most talent of any single player, maybe ever. He might be the most talented player of all time. Michael Vick can throw a football like this 70 yards. He can run a 4.2 40. If you add that combined with Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson, Jerry Rice, with Barry Sanders, you don't think there's literally zero way to guard that offense. If you have no disrespect to Joe Montana, but if you have Joe Montana back there, sitting back, throwing his little slants, throwing his little outs, it limits the offense, okay? It limits the offense, Joe Montana being in the offense. I don't want Aaron Rodgers on this team either, okay? Aaron Rodgers is going to start smoking ayahuasca and be lost in the dark, okay? He's not going to find his way, okay? Michael Vick is going to be there, okay? And Brett Favre, God knows what Brett Favre is going to be doing in the locker room, okay? I'm not saying Michael Vick's the best guy of all time, okay? Maybe Michael Vick.
Yeah. I don't think Michael Vick's is paragon of good virtue that you think he is, okay? What is going on here?
We're talking about pre-arrest Michael Vick, okay? Pre-arrest, okay? He hasn't got arrested yet, all right? This version of Michael Vick, who can run a 4.2 40, who can throw the ball 70 yards, can completely open up this offense where, again, it really doesn't matter who's on the defensive side of the ball for the NFC if Michael Vick's out there because, again, you start getting rushers after him. Michael Vick just turns and runs for 80 yards for a touchdown, or he throws a bomb to Randy Moss for a touchdown. Like, it's an unbelievable offense if Michael Vick's in there. So that's why I chose Michael Vick because, again, it's one game, and he's the single most talented player that I've ever seen in my life. But with that being said, you want to know who I'm picking, ladies and gentlemen? The AFC. I'm picking the AFC to win this game because
all that, and you picked the AFC. This is unbelievable.
Yeah. You want to know why? Because first of all, okay, I think the defenses are comparable. I actually like the back seven of the AFC better. When you give me Ray Lewis, Junior Seau, and Derek Thomas, I like that a lot. It's very comparable to the linebackers of the NFC. And then two, I like the AFC secondary better as well. Darrell Revis, Charles Woodson, freaking the safeties are much better in my opinion with Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu in there as well. So again, I like that back seven to be able to contain the weapons of the NFC a little bit better. And then two, listen, we talked about it. Okay, this is one game. You want to know the player who's the best in one game scenarios, maybe in the history of sports? It's Tom freaking Brady. Okay. This guy wins games that he's not supposed to win all the time. Every single time you think this guy's down and out, he wins the freaking game. So you want to know who I'm picking? I'm picking the AFC because they got Tom Brady, the greatest athlete in the history of sports, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Brady's going to win this game for the AFC.
To Matt's point, To Matt's point,
Athlete is a stretch.
we have seen Randy Moss in big games before sort of disappear, right? We like there's evidence of that. Jerry Rice is Jerry Rice. Megatron, I think, is one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. Possibly, you could argue there's been no one who's required to be double teamed at the line of scrimmage I've ever seen ever, and it didn't matter.
Real quick point. Sammy talked about how Darrelle Revis couldn't lock down prime Randy Moss. 09 Revis literally locked down 10 prime wide receivers. It was Andre Johnson, Ocho Cinco, T.O., Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson. Like, he locked them all down. Like, none of them had more than 40 yards receiving. So to say that he couldn't have locked down prime Randy Moss, I don't think – I think that's discounting prime Revis to a big extent, because he literally locked down every prime receiver when he was in his prime. So there's that.
Yeah. I do agree. My thing is the fact of although I like the secondary for the AFC, I think that I rely on Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, Megatron, Marshall Faulk, Barry Sanders to win their matchups more consistently against the linebacking core and secondary of the AFC than I do the AFC players, which realistically, I love LT, I love Derrick Henry, but and Marvin Harrison was a great possession receiver. Andre Johnson is a beast. Antonio Brown's one of the most twitchy wide receivers we've ever seen play the game, and his route running savvy is through the roof. But I don't think they consistently are able to do the things that Randy Moss, Megatron, and Jerry Rice are able to do. But I will say this. I'm not as convinced as I was before we started this episode that the AFC is going to lose this game. Because to Matt's point, Tom Brady is probably the smartest NFL player we've ever seen at the most important position where intelligence matters the most. His pre-snap reads, everything like that. Like, they did an interview on him in that Super Bowl for the Buccaneers where he faced the Chiefs. And he's like, I had 2 weeks to prepare for them. I knew their defense better than they knew their defense. He knew the scheme they were running by the personnel as they were running on the field. He would watch the sub packages sub on and off and immediately know the play he was going to call and where they needed to be because of who was on and off the field. I think that with the route running savvy you have of Andre Johnson, Antonio Brown, Marvin Harrison, that Tom Brady can do the things he needs to do. Not to mention, you have one of the greatest all-around tight ends of all time in Rob Gronkowski, and probably the greatest receiving tight end of all time in Travis Kelce. Those with a Derrick Henry-esque player running behind a double team of, you put Joe Thomas and Rob Gronkowski on the same side, and they double team up to the second level. I like that. I think that I'm going to give a score prediction.
Ooh,
I don't think either of these teams get over 30 points. I'm going to call it 27-24. I think that that's what we see here. This is a 3-point game. And I'm going to go with the NFC by 3.
I agree.
That's my pick.
I'm
picking them by 3. I don't want to. I think they could go either way. I think that
of course you don't want to.
If you played this game 10 times, right? If you were to sim this game 10 times, I would not be surprised if both teams went 5-5. I don't think there is enough on either side that they win like that, but I'm going to go NFC. And Sammy, I know you had a big thing. I didn't give you a chance to get your score prediction because you started shitting on Kris, gave her a chance to defend herself. Then you transitioned to Matt. You were firing shots all over the place.
Yes, you want to know? It's been look. I haven't recorded in a couple weeks now, and I just got to say, I didn't expect this amount of chicanery and just utter blasphemy to be happening. So forgive me for attacking my colleagues. I apologize, Kris and Matt. Not really, but I'm just saying that
we don't want to anyway. Don't.
Yeah, I didn't think you guys did. Anyway, okay. Okay. With that being said, look, as for score predictions, look, let me not be too disrespectful. Let me tone back on the satire. I do think that top to bottom, that both teams are obviously evenly matched because it's the greatness of both conferences. So obviously they're going to be evenly matched. We have not even talked about the linebacker groups that are going out there. And Lawrence Taylor, Luke Kuechly, and Derek Brooks. Look, Lawrence Taylor is, you could argue, the greatest player in NFL history, let alone defensive player. Okay. On top of that, you have Deion Sanders as a corner. Deion Sanders is more than just a corner. He is a threat with the football. Okay. I just think there's too much greatness. I know the greatness of Tom Brady is heavy, and I will never ever discredit Tom Brady's brains at all. I just think there's too much talent for Tom Brady it's just too much talent for Tom Brady to be able to handle. And the physicality, it doesn't even matter how smart Tom Brady is. Tom Brady might know. But Luke Kuechly might know too. Luke Kuechly is one of the smartest linebackers, and you could argue he is the smartest linebacker to ever step foot in the National Football League. So, look, man, I like everything about the Tom Brady and what he can do with that weapons room. I absolutely do. Evidently, I don't think it matters. I do think it's going to be high scoring. I'm going to go the NFC 31, and I'm going to go the AFC 27.
And it's funny we talk about Luke Kuechly, but we haven't mentioned probably the smartest and most capable safety, realistically, in depth, in Ed Reed. Ed Reed played mind games with some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And if you have any questions about that, there's an interview about what Tom Brady wrote on his wristband every single time he played Baltimore. What was it? 2-0. Fine 2-0. Because he knew that he had to figure out what Ed Reed was doing before he could even make a decision. Ed Reed, when they did the all-time team, right, and Bill Belichick was on there, he showed a play where Ed Reed knew that when he flipped his hips to the inner part of the field, Peyton Manning was going to go to the one-on-one matchup. So the first thing Ed Reed did was he backpedaled, flipped his hips, and didn't even look at Peyton Manning. Knew exactly what was happening. Just rotated and ran and intercepted the football. All right? So it's hard for me to sit here and say that, because I think that along with Michael Vick's arm talent and Ed Reed being that intelligent, it could be one of the turning points for this game to go to the AFC. But Matt, you didn't get a chance to give your score prediction either. And so I'm kind of interested in what you have to say, because you picked it. You're 1-2 for the AFC. You picked the AFC. Yeah, we both picked NFC. So we got to hear your score prediction, man.
I think the score prediction would kind of depend on what era we're playing in. If we're playing the early 2000s era, where you can beat the shit out of the receivers and, grab them and, throw them to the ground like they were in the early 2000s. And obviously all the head-to-head contact was allowed then. And, you could get away with a lot more stuff. I think we're a little bit more scoring. But since if we're playing in this era, like today's era, it's going to be a little bit more high scoring, because Revis isn't going to be able to get his hands on the receivers as much, vice versa for the NFC corners against the AFC receivers. So I think it's going to be a little bit higher scoring than I probably would have picked. I probably would have picked this game maybe 21-20 if it was the early 2000s. But since it's this era, I think I'm going something like, I'd say 30-27 on an Adam Vinatieri game-winning field goal. That's what I would say. If we're adding special teams in there, obviously the AFC wins with field goal kickers. So I'm taking the AFC on a game winner by Adam Vinatieri. That's what I'll do.
It's not a bad pick. And like you said, if there was a kicker you ever wanted in a big game where it mattered the most, that's the guy. But Kris, you got 2 NFC picks, 1 AFC pick. We're all about the same place in score, right? We're all right about there, 27-ish, 30-ish. Where are you at with this matchup?
Man, y'all have given people a lot to talk about, except Sammy. Anyways, I would just like to go on record first, because I said this when we started doing these setups, that my selections were all based on people who were done playing the game. There were some of their selections who are still currently playing.
Bruce Smith is done playing the game, just to be fair.
I'm not going on Bruce Smith. I'm just saying in general. But anyways, moving on. So as much as I like the AFC, obviously, offensive wise, I think Tom Brady always has to be that spot. But for me, when I look at it, when I look at the NFC's, because I really think that's what it would come down to. It would come down to the NFC defense and the AFC offense, and only mostly because of Tom Brady and then who you have in the backfield. I'm not gonna lie to you. As far as I know we went through this when we started building these. The AFC wide receiver team doesn't. I mean, they're good. Don't get me wrong. Antonio Brown, obviously, like outside of his off-field stuff, would probably be their best wide receiver. I feel like in that group. One that you would have to really pay attention to. But when you're putting that between the AFC wide receiver team and the NFC wide receiver team, I think the NFC team takes that 10 times out of 10. So I don't think I would X that for the AFC. I don't think they're an option, to be quite honest. So when you're looking at Tom Brady, and then even when you're looking at Vick, right, I think that's kind of where that comes down to is the quarterback play. And while, yes, obviously we love Tom Brady, so I'm never going to talk negative about him. But there is something that Vick has that Tom Brady does not. And it's the ability to move around and the ability to get downfield and actually use his legs to get some type of play. Tom Brady is a pocket passer. He has always been a pocket passer. Although he is elite at it, he's very good at it. Also, we have seen him struggle when he is being pressured, highly pressured, and has nowhere to go with the ball. That's where I would look at the matchups actually mattering. So when you're looking at the NFC, and let's start looking at the NFC's their defensive tackles and their defensive line, that's where it's going to matter. Like we've talked about this for months now, the ability for the trenches to make the biggest difference in a game. So when you're looking at the NFC D line, all you have to tell me is Michael Strahan and Aaron Donald. Obviously, the other two are fantastic. You look at those two, okay, well, we've seen Michael Strahan against Tom Brady, right, in the Super Bowl. We've seen Aaron Donald. I mean, I'm just being honest, though, right? So you're looking at Aaron Donald. I know it hurts, but it's the truth. It's sometimes the truth isn't necessarily nice, right? Right. So Michael Strahan has been very successful against Tom Brady. Aaron Donald, even though he's never been a fan of having to play against him, I feel like he has severed pretty damn well against him as well. So those are, to me, some of the best defensive tackles to rush a passer and to rush a quarterback in the NFL, period. So you can't tell me, like, we've seen what the O-line looks like in the AFC. We went through the conversations as far as how hard it was specifically for left tackle, right? And having to switch people over to maybe spots they necessarily shouldn't be in anyway. So when you're looking at that, you have to understand that the NFC defensive line is going to rush and probably rush quite often, which is not going to give him a lot of time to get that ball out. Derrick Henry, yes, he is a beast at running back. We know that. But if your front line is doing what they need to do, which based on what they have, I would expect them to be able to do so. I'm not saying that, the running back team is not going to be sufficient. But I don't think they're going to be as heavy set as you would think. Again, and to Matt's point, it could also depend on how. I'm not saying the AFC is going to win. It could also depend on how the rules are, because there are different rules from previous 2000s to where it is now. That is obviously the stuff now is more so for the offense, whereas prior to, you could just kind of knee a dude in his face and you're pretty much okay, right? You just got to move forward. But I think honestly for the AFC offense, for me, their biggest weapon is their tight ends, because that's really the only place in the NFC where I feel like they don't compare. No disrespect to the NFC tight ends at all, but I do feel like Gronkowski and Travis Kelce are probably going to be 1 and 2 in the Hall of Fame when it comes to tight ends, and they're two completely different tight ends. That to me is the beauty of it, right? So you have Gronkowski, who is an all-around tight end. He can get down the field, he can make passes, he can also get in the middle of the run and just do dirty work. He's perfectly okay with that. Whereas Travis Kelce is more of a get him downfield, get him the ball, and just let him get out in space. And there's really no stopping him at his prime. Now, we know that he's kind of fallen off as of recently, but at his prime, he's a very big target. So he might make up for some of the lack of the wide receiver. But to be honest with you, just overall, I really just don't see how AFC wins this game, and more so because of that particular reason. The quarterback play is going to matter a lot. And as much as I'm not going to lie, we went through this debate with the quarterbacks for the NFC back and forth as far as like who would take that NFC quarterback spot. Originally, we all ended up agreeing on Vick, but I do think one game in this particular setup, I could see him potentially winning the game. Absolutely. Because it comes down to he has something that Tom Brady does not have. So if he's being pressured, he's not stuck trying to figure out where to throw the ball away or take a sack. He can easily manipulate his way, get out, and get down the field and get plays and keep moving. And then you look at the receivers that he's throwing to. You look at the running backs that you also have. So not only do you have to worry about him running the ball, now you got these two ridiculously players right behind him that you also have to account for. And then you have his actual wide receivers who you also have to account for. So your tight ends are kind of just like, hey, like if I really don't have anywhere to go, I'll just dump it off. But how likely is Vick to really dump the ball off anyway? So I don't see it, quite honestly. I do think it'll be a really good game. I'm not saying it'd be an easy one. But if I had to make a choice, I am going with the NFC, and I think it would probably be like a 30-27 game, but I would have it going to overtime just because of Brady's ability to make comebacks. I do think it would most likely go to overtime, but I do think the NFC ends up winning it.
So there you have it. Roster set, match up. Only one of us picked Tom Brady, the GOAT, to lead the AFC to the win. And that's that. So get in the comments. Tell us, do you think that this would happen? What do you think? Who would win? All those things and more. Did we get it wrong with Michael Vick? Is Bruce Smith the biggest snub of all time? Did all these things and more? Please let us know in the comments, and we'll see you here next time.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.